what would be an appropriate thing to kind of put in here to kind of get started. So looks like Will has it here. Will, can you hold it up? What do we have? Rubber bat. So if you have been here for any amount of time, you know these pesky things get in here multiple times a year. I've lost count of how many I've taken out of here. Some alive, some much less than alive, but they get in here. We have sealed up as much as we know how to seal up on the outside, but yet they still manage to find a way in here. So this will kind of be our first contribution for what's going to go in here. So if you have something you brought this morning, I just want to ask you to kind of make your way up here to the front. We're going to use mic 5, Kyle, if you can. All right, I see Donna has something. Come on up, Donna. Yeah, it's going to come back out. Okay. I'll hand this to you, Donna. You can kind of talk about what you have, and we'll let you put it in here.
I don't know if I can handle this and what I got in my hand. But I've got a cold of some sort, so I'm not getting close to anybody. But I have a few things that I thought would be proper. And one of was, you know, we can't have the Touch of Dutch anymore or the Rotary Ramble. So I put a thing in here that I hope that this is still going on in 2045. I won't be here to see it, I know, unless I'm really old. And so that's one thing. Then I am really involved with the Historical Society. I started one in Hebron, and I started this one. And I'm really proud of it, and I hope it's still there and going. So I put some things in there about it and said that I hope there's good membership there. And then I have a cell phone and the cord. They probably won't have this then, I don't know. And I also found a golf ball that was from Capers that I got years ago, and I hope Capers is still here too. Then I put the local newspaper, this week's newspaper. Let's hope it's still going, you know, with the internet and all that. That seems to be not the thing you're doing anymore. And so this is the latest issue of the newspaper. Plus, hopefully they're not having to use this then, but it's a reminder. And the last thing is my husband had this store, which is Sell It Again. It's celebrating 110 years of generation. And so there's an article in here about Nathan and his dad. And you know, Nathan and his dad was the first president of this town. In 1967, he came and he became the president and started this neat town, which a lot of people did not want because of taxation. But you see what we have now. And this place right here where we're at was Art's grandfather's lot. And he gave this, or he sold this lot to this church to start this church here. That was Edie Logavine. And so in this, it's got that with Nathan's card. And I'm hopeful that it says in there, when they open it, to give it back to Nathan. And I hope he's still there doing it. And I praise the Lord for this church and for, I know I won't be here then, but I sure things will go on without me. That's it.
All right, we got Gwen and Kendra.
I brought a movement sticker because we love movement and hope it's still going on.
And then I have an old iPod and an old phone because technology is probably going to change a lot. So yeah.
Thank you, girls. Come on up. See Donna, Phyllis.
I have a solar dancer, which I have all in my windshield if you ever seen my Suburban going around. It has made more people smile, and I think it's just a reminder that even the smallest, stupidest little $1 things from the dollar store can make people smile on bad days.
And I have this envelope with pictures. I didn't get one of Sig Bozeman, but I did get one of Mom. She's 88. She's the second oldest member of the congregation. I have one with my grandkids wearing masks at a birthday party for Kylie. I have pictures in here of the gas prices at $1.69 in town, and where we went up to South Lake Mall and took pictures of the empty parking lot up there. And there's some more, but I'm not sure what they all are. So anyway, that's what I'm putting in.
Thank you, Phyllis.
So Maddie and I brought a Soldier's Pocket Bible. It's in the old digital camo pattern, which was phased out by the Army this year. Generally, they're given by a chaplain to soldiers as they are going into something, coming out of something, what have you. It's got a bunch of different little songs in it and things like that. The Lord's Prayer in English, Arabic, etc., wherever you might find yourself in the world. So it's kind of a little unique deal. Presented to, on the inside, American Reformed Church, DeMont, Indiana, in memory of all those who served, past, present, future, October 11th, 2020. So that's what we're putting in. Hoorah! Oh.
I am putting in one of our old songbooks with all our favorite old songs in it, and I do have a couple of them highlighted, some of our favorites.
I brought one of the little keychains that the kids get from VBS, just kind of as a token of what VBS Kids Ministry looks like now, and I'm excited to see what it looks like in 25 years.
I'm going to show my age. My grandfather and grandmother were one of the founding people that started this church, so I have something special connected with that. But when I was growing up in the 50s and 60s, Sunday school was a little bit different than it is now. We earned our memory work and attendance by bars that we received at the end of the year. They were pins with bars on them, and they said, and we worked really hard to get those because we wanted to be recognized. We didn't get toys and candy like the kids want now. We wanted these bars, and we wore them proudly on our Sunday clothes because, you know, we were really proud of that. So I just wanted to put that in the box as remembrance of years gone by.
Thank you, Connie.
Well, great minds think alike because I also have a bat. I tend to say to new staff members that you don't officially work here until you've had a bat encounter.
For the record, she hides from them and gets me.
I do.
I'm just saying.
I have, let's see here. I have a copy of the email that was sent out. You know, I had to start sending online bulletins when quarantine started. So this is a copy of what I emailed out for church news back in March. I also have our first bulletin from when we were able to meet again in person on May 17. I have a copy of the KV Post, which has an article on the cover about our church and our 100-year anniversary. And then I also have the letter from the governor. You want me to read it? Okay. So we got a letter from Eric Holcomb, and it said, I would like to congratulate American Reformed Church, Reverend Troy Nanninga, and all members of the congregation on the celebration of your 100th anniversary. American Reformed Church has played a vital role in the DeMont community over the last century. Thank you for your work, for the work you do for those in need, and for being a beacon of hope for all. The state of Indiana has benefited greatly from your service in spreading God's word. I join you in celebrating American Reformed Church's centennial and wish you continued success in the next 100 years. Sincerely, Governor Eric Holcomb.
As all of you know, I had a little bit to do with the music in this church for a few years. But because of a thing called a house fire, I lost a lot of the recordings that we had of choir and what have you. But I did manage to salvage this, This is a hymn sing CD that Ron Bozell, Mark Boone, and myself were members of. I have these for sale for $15. No, anyhow, I thought it would be great to put one of these in there to remember what we did. Thank you.
Thank you, Phil.
So I was contemplating on what to put in there, and then when we sang the song, How Great Is Our God and How Great Thou Art mashup this morning, it just really spoke to me. How Great Thou Art has been one of my favorite songs, one of our favorite hymns for a really, really, really long time. And I'm sure it will continue to be a favorite hymn as we go forward. So since Melissa's been putting together some wonderful mashups of our new praise songs and our old hymns, I'm going to put this one in there as a just as a token to remind us that where we started putting our praise songs and our hymns together.
Thank you, Teresa.
So as a committee, we were all like supposed to bring something, and of course we thought of things, a Beyblade that our grandchildren play with. Ralph thought of a fidget spinner, which our daughter had to handle in her school, but you know what, we couldn't find that, and we forgot to like take one from our grandkids. So this is an ad also. Please get your picture taken. This is our committee. We have it masked and we have it unmasked, just to remember.
Thank you, Artie.
I just have a few things that we used in our celebration, and I also included a flash drive. I'm pretty sure they're not going to be able to ever know what's on it, but if they ever did, everything that we did for the celebration is on it, but I don't think they'll have them.
I brought 2 newspaper articles. One is the local paper that Stacy's already deposited, so I'll return that to our house. The other one is an article that displays 50 different types of masks that are available for sale. So you can pick out the one that's just right for you. I didn't bring a mask, but I'm very tempted to put this one in it.
So there's been this ongoing joke that I'm chairman of the deacons. What a year to take on that job. So what better thing to put in there than a current financial statement? My hope is when we open this again, we have a big pamphlet of this with all the ministries and the growth that we can have in this church.
And you can't have a birthday without a birthday card and candles that spell out 100. So that's going in there too.
Good job, Chuck.
I know another thing, obviously, it's been different, even for us elders, is these noisy communion things, whatever these are. Dan and Renee did a great job today. We appreciate it, even though. So we'll see if these stick around. And then I guess I don't think no one's put a church bulletin in.
I'm going to put in a movement shirt because why wouldn't we want the most superior ministry represented? You know?
Wow.
We are superior in every way. I know that if it came down to an all-out, no-rules street brawl, movement would take every ministry in here, not because we're the strongest, but because we have the numbers.
We had also thought of the communion cups from today, but we have a communion cup from past that we might not ever get to see again.
So Troy talked about our logos that we had available, and my son helped design this, the son of this church, and I just want everybody to remember that as you grow up in this church and you help raise the kids, teach the kids, mentor the kids, they're still with this church even though they're not here.
Anybody else have anything that we want to put in here? If there's some of you who are thinking, I would love anything, but I forgot. It happens. Bring it in. We'll make sure it gets in here so I can be a part of the celebration. 25 years. You get to look back at 125 years of God's goodness to us. So thank you, everybody who brought something. We look forward to hearing the stories behind this when this is open again in 25 years. So what we're going to do next is we're going to begin to kind of hear a little bit from some of our former pastors, staff members, and those who have gone into ministry from our congregation. So we're going to go and start with a video. We have 3 different videos from Warren Bovenkirk and from Jason Baker and from Stephen DeVries. So you can go ahead and get those queued up, Jeff. We'll start with those, and we'll hear then after that from some
Hi,
of our
American
folks who are here in
Reformed
person.
Church. This is Jason Baker, son of Bob and Edie Baker. I want to congratulate you on 100 years of ministry. That is certainly a milestone to celebrate. I'm sorry I'm not able to be with you this weekend, but I just wanted you to know that I praise the Lord for all those at ARC who poured into my life during my growing up years. Sunday school teachers, youth leaders, choir directors. There's so many I wouldn't even try to name you all. But please know that each of you played a significant role in my spiritual growth. After 13 years of serving at a church in Chambersburg, Pennsylvania, this summer my family relocated to my wife Julie's hometown of Abingdon, Virginia. And I'm currently serving as senior pastor of Abingdon Bible Church, the church Julie grew up in. The transition has gone well, and I'm finding it a blessing to serve here despite the challenges that come with this pandemic. Thanks so much for letting me share in your celebration weekend. I pray the Lord will continue to bless American Reformed Church with many more years of fruitfulness for His kingdom.
Friends at American Reformed Church, greetings to you here from North Holland Reformed Church in Holland, Michigan. My name is Stephen DeVries, and I grew up at American Reformed for all of my years of childhood, for all of my years of high school, right up until 2007 when I graduated from high school with a sense of call to become a minister. In 2007, I preached my first sermon on Youth Sunday, and you all endured that and still continue to encourage me on, probably to get more training to become a minister. From high school graduation, I left DeMott to go to Northwestern College in Orange City, Iowa. That's where I met my wife, Caitlin. When we graduated from Northwestern, we moved to Holland, Michigan in 2011, where I began my studies at Western Theological Seminary. I want to say again my immense gratitude to American Reformed. Those seminary years, I was supported so faithfully, both in prayers, in encouragement. It was always just so good to be back at ARC, to receive the encouragement that you all had provided leading through all of my growing up years to them. And I'm grateful still for the financial support that Caitlin and I received when I was in seminary. After I graduated from Western in 2014, I was called to be the next lead pastor here at North Holland Reformed Church. So my promotion, I went from intern to lead pastor. It was about as good of a promotion as you could get. It came with health insurance and a house. What more could you ask for? But nonetheless, in July of 2014, I was ordained at American Reformed Church as a minister of Word and Sacrament in the RCA. And since then, Caitlin and I have spent the last 6 years here ministering in Holland, Michigan. It has been good to be at North Holland. We, since that time, also have had 2 children, Adriana and Benjamin, and Caitlin also went through seminary and is also an ordained minister. So I want to say thank you again for all of your support, and I pray that this weekend of celebrating 100 years of faithful ministry at American Reformed Church may be celebrated with so much gratitude and joy for God's faithfulness and the hope for all that God will continue to do. Grace and peace to you, friends. Thanks again.
Hi, this is Warren
And Arvella
Bovenkirk, and we're in Modesto, California right now as we're doing this video. And we're calling just to congratulate the congregation on a wonderful 100-year anniversary. The church has certainly been in ministry faithfully to the congregation and to the community. I've always been impressed with the church's worldwide ministry through missions. And the church has been faithful to the Word of God. I have always been impressed by that. Some of the reminders of my childhood and teenage years, probably more with people. I remember people like Fred and Marguerite Molinar and Tony Fozzie and Bill and Alice Peterson. I remember Bill and Alice primarily because after we had long gone from that area, they picked up my mother every Sunday. She was handicapped, but they took her to church every Sunday. And I think because of their efforts, she became a Christian, came to know the Lord. I appreciate their influence on my life too. As I appreciate my dad. My dad made sure my sister and I were in worship, and he had a great testimony of what it meant to be a man of God. One of the pastors I remember very dearly was Reverend Grantis, Albers, just an awesome man of God. And I believe that he was the one that was sort of the inspiration of why I went into the ministry. And he was Arbella's pastor too. When was that?
And when I was a young child, he was my pastor before he came to American Reform.
We have served 5 Reformed churches during our ministry. 3 of them have been in the Midwest and 2 of them on the West Coast. And they've been a real variety of different kinds of ministry, from New Church Start to Established Church to Ethnic Church and so forth. Right now we are serving the Reformed Church as retired people, but we are chaplains for the Reformed Church. There's a group of people who are chaplains in the Reformed Church in the United States and Canada, and we are chaplains to retired pastors and their wives, and that has been a blessed ministry, and we certainly love it.
We're sorry that we're unable to be with you due partly to COVID and partly to family emergencies here, that we're not able to travel right now. But we wish you a blessed week and a blessed future.
Thank you so much. Bye.
And we're grateful to Jason and Stephen and Warren to take the time to send those videos to us this morning. But we're also blessed to have a number of former pastors and staff here this morning to give us updates. So I'm going to have Pastor Dan and Ray to come on up. Looks like you probably got about 5-10 minutes. You have a little bit more time than we maybe thought to kind of update us on your life, your ministry, what the Lord's been doing in your life since your time here at ARC. Okay, so yep, they'll just use ones that they had during service. Okay.
No, we're going.
Here we go. Go ahead.
I'm going first?
Yeah, go ahead.
Gosh, seems like so much has happened since we left this place, and these wonderful memories of the very full years that we had here with our family. We spent 2.5 years at a church called New Hope in Wausau, Wisconsin. A lot happened in those couple years, including starting another Kids Hope program up there, which is still going on, and also something called Ruby's Pantry, which is a food distribution that that is held every single month. That is also still going on. Hundreds of people are going through, and it's not led by or governed by the government, so we get to go through the sanctuary and share our faith with them. So that was really some highlights from that church. After we left there, we came back to Michigan, and I finished seminary, and I graduated in May 2019 with a MDiv, a Master's of Divinity, and then also a certificate in Ministry and Disability. We live in a home in West Olive, which is just north of Holland. We are now serving a church in Holland. The name of that church is Maplewood Reformed Church. We share a pastorate there for a year and a half. Actually, that ending this month, we will be finishing our role as transition pastor there. And beginning November 1, we will be shifting into leading them into their next chapter. So it's pretty exciting. There's lots of possibilities. COVID has had a big impact. It's almost the way things are set up with a beautiful church and a beautiful neighborhood. It's almost like a new church start. So that's where we've been in ministry. As far as our family, which most of you know, our oldest daughter is Jess. She's still pastoring at a church in Standale. Will, their oldest child, our oldest grandson, has his driving permit.
Yeah, we're getting older too.
Yeah, he's getting older.
Yeah.
So he is a sophomore in high school, and Eli is in 7th grade. They're involved in lacrosse, basketball, any sport they can possibly be in, and including cross country. Missy is still married to Jason. They're still in Florida. They have 6 kids. JJ is now just started high school. He has a 9th grader, and all of those sisters make his house and his life very complicated and very loud. So they go 9th, 7th, 5th, 3rd preschool, and then they have a 2-year-old at home. He is still in the Air Force, still flying F-22s as much as he can. Lots of change. That's on their horizon, which they're not even sure what that's all going to look like yet. Vanessa is doing quite well with her health struggles. That she was a big part of our situation here. She is working with hospice, serving as a bereavement social worker. So she makes phone calls with people for the next year after their loved one has died. She is living with us, and we enjoy that. Rebecca, our youngest, is now back home. She is an assistant general manager of Hops downtown Holland, very popular restaurant down there. If you ever get to Holland, you want to check out Hops. She loves it there. It's been really great to have her back home with us also. I'll let you say anything more you want to add.
Yeah. Well, one of the things which has been interesting at times is these latter years of ministry. Sometimes when you think you would have things set and a pattern established, it's kind of been liminal space for us because, as Renee mentioned, we spent about 2.5 years in Wausau, and then God moved us back to Michigan again. We actually worked in between the time and moving back and starting to work with Maplewood at a small Presbyterian church, which is over 150 years old. And it was probably about a 90-mile drive. We worked at that part-time for about 6 months, helping them transition, and then became part of the transition team for the Regional Synod of the Great Lakes, and that's what connected us with Maplewood to begin with. And, God God works and challenges in a lot of different ways. And I mean, Renee and I have worked together in ministry in a lot of different forms and fashions, but not always as co-pastors. And so it sets up you really? No. Yeah, we'll talk about it. But it is a whole different rhythm to doing ministry. And, I think as we discover, I do probably am stronger in some of the operational kinds of ministry, Renee more in the adaptive stuff. And so it really becomes a complementary kind of relationship in terms of serving that congregation.
Which means we're always complimenting each other.
Yeah, most of the time. But it is different. And I think many of you know when you work with your spouse and see them every day, it is a different pattern to life. But we have enjoyed that very, very much. And I think that's one of the places where God has placed us. For me, one of the other things I do in addition, because we're sharing a position, is I also drive a school bus. That's a whole different challenge in itself. Doing my second year of that, and in these COVID times, also driving with about half the number of students on board that bus than I did last year. It is incredible when I begin to talk to some of the students, and I had one not too long ago whose brother was missing from the bus, and I asked, why he hadn't been there. I said, well, he can't go to school for a week, and then she admitted that her brother's teacher had contracted COVID. And so he was under quarantine for at least a week before being able to come back to school. So these are tough times, and I just encourage you not only to remember those who are doing ministry, because this is one of the toughest times to do ministry in the midst of a pandemic, but also to remember those who are involved in education. It's a whole different world out there, and the kind of stresses and strains that they're dealing with are incredible. And so I just want you to thank those who are teaching. I know there are several people here, and for those involved in education. So I think that gives you an update quickly on where we're at, and hopefully get a chance to talk to a number of you afterwards as well. Good. Thank you.
So next we will hear from Earl Slotman. After that we'll hear from George and Joyce McGee. So if they can be ready to go after Earl. So come on up, Earl. If your wife wants to come up too, she's more than welcome to come up if she wants to stay there.
Well, yeah, where do we start? Where do we finish? Because I started here in the 1980s and finished in mid-1990s. Youth and education, for those of you who did not get the chance of being under the ministry that I was here with. It was a good time for us as a family because we came here with 2 children from Florida, and as we came, we also had the privilege of having twins while we were here, and you were so gracious in the baby shower you gave us that it was phenomenal. That's one of the highlights of what we remember from here. Continue to remember from here. During that time, just to let you know a little bit about the 100-year committee, Artie Myers. It was brought out just yesterday that I said, well, I was in the office that's right up here next to the nursery. That room was my first office. And then, of course, the whole was just started over here for the addition. And then I moved to the office over there. And Artie said, well, I couldn't remember where your office was, but I knew where your bedroom was. For a good length of time, the ladies of this congregation came in and helped us because Barb, in her pregnancy, had to be off her feet. And so doing laundry and cleaning and all those kind of things, you graciously came in and helped us. We were so blessed to fill out our family here. We sat, I'd go over there, but Phil's in the way. Always sat three rows back, right there, after this edition came. There we could keep an eye on you, and you keep an eye on us. Since then, those of you who have kind of kept an eye on us, we went from here to Fulton, Illinois, a little town right on the Mississippi River that we served there for 7 years, and I was the solo guy there. We had our kids into school by that point, all of them going on, and then we moved from there to Cedar Grove, Wisconsin. And Cedar Grove, where's Cedar Grove, Wisconsin? Well, if you're ever up in the north of Milwaukee, Sheboygan area, and you get lost and you find a little burg that smells like Johnsonville brats, that's Johnsonville. But Cedar Grove's just south and east of that. So the first time I got lost, I found myself in Johnsonville. That was kind of fun. But so the land of brats and head cheese and Green Bay Packers, we actually became Packer fans, my wife and I, while we were there. My son never lost his passion for the Bears. So now we have friends and enemies in this church, and I understand that. Served there for 10 years. Kids went all the way through high school, college, and all of that in that time. And then, since then, transitioned back to Michigan. Barb and I both grew up in Michigan. And we are living in Hudsonville, Michigan, which, for those of you who aren't familiar with that area, we're halfway between Holland, Jeltsmas, and Grand Rapids, which some consider to be the New Jerusalem of the Reformed Church. It's not true. Hudsonville is. I'm privileged right now to serve a church by being the minister of visitation. I've done that for a couple of years, and ministry changed a lot. Visitation has just completely done a 360, and we're trying to reach out to folks with phone calls and letters and any which way we can. And so that's been kind of the moves in our life. I do have a burning question, though, for you all. You've filled a chest with stuff. Are we going to bury it someplace, or are we going to put it under lock and key, or are you taking it with you to your next church?
It's going to go in the historical room up there.
The historical room. So anybody who wants to see the chest in the next 25 years, you can go to the historical room. I'm just wondering, what else do I need to talk about? Probably it. Children. Oh, yeah, that's right. We have 4. And we have 4 grandchildren now. Three of our children went into education. Our oldest is married with 2 of our grandchildren. He teaches in the West Michigan area at a charter school, being the technology guy, not technician, technology guy. Another daughter is in the Holland area, Kristen, the youngest of the twins. She is teaching physics to high schoolers. And last year she had graduated, kind of moved through in that, and was teaching aerospace engineering. And we're like, where did you get that from? Good job. And then our second daughter, who is Kim, married a minister, and they're out in northwest Iowa. She has 2 children, and one was the daughter was just born not quite 2 weeks ago, and we were able to be there, so we're kind of on our pathway from there back home again, and we've been gone for about 2 weeks. So that's that. And then we have another daughter who's in Lansing, Michigan. So those are where our 4 children are at. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you so much, Earl. Now I'd like to welcome George and Joyce McGee to come and give an update. And after that, we'll hear from Reverend Scott Summers, who was an intern here back in his seminary days. Welcome, George and Joyce.
Before we came here, we were retired, and now we're even more retired.
Well, we continue to go to church and get involved in the programs of the church. It isn't always relaxing and vacation, but once you are called by the Lord, the call lasts through your life, and the ways in which you respond to it may differ, and the opportunities that come will be different. The people that you react and interact with may change, but along the way we had some wonderful years, about 40 years in Japan as missionaries, and we had the blessing of having children along the way, all of whom are doing well. Well, I'll let Joyce continue before I get out of control here.
The children are, as they were when we were here, spread around the world. A daughter in the Netherlands, 2 sons still in Japan, and our adopted Japanese son in Michigan. All married. Daughter married a Netherlander, Dutchman, and sons marrying Japanese women, and Japanese son marrying an American. And now with borders closed everywhere, we can't meet anyone except our son in Michigan. So he's been good to us. Yeah, we are in church by Zoom and so on. We continue to be involved with people. I'm a care elder in Third Church in Holland. We have two kinds of elders. One is administrative and one is care elders. Care elders do calling and ministry to people more directly. It's really a good place, a good arrangement, I think. And we've been involved with the Japanese ministry within Holland. It began 25, 30 years ago to have a worship once a month with Japanese people in Japanese language. That's kind of run its course. We're on the way out with that, I think, but it has served many, for instance, women particularly who are married to American men, also Japanese students at Hope College, of whom there aren't as many now as there used to be. And almost none of the students who come from Japan are Christians, very few of them. So that's been a good continuing ministry to another set of people that are around. And also George is involved with a Bible study on Wednesday mornings. It used to be, they're called the Sunrise Saints, and they used to meet at 6:30, which was truly sunrise. In COVID times, they meet at 10 o'clock on the computer, on the table. I love it. Don't have to get up as early. So I think that's us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, George and Joyce. I want to welcome up Scott Summers, who is, there he is. Come on up, Scott. Then after that, we'll hear from Roger DeYoung, who is the son of the church who went to serve the Lord in ministry as well.
Thank you. Let me begin by saying what a beautiful service this morning. I was truly blessed. The music ministry may be the best, I don't know, but it's top notch. But I will say the preaching of the word was very good too, so thank you so much for blessing us. There's been a little bit of confusion as to who we are and why we're here, and that's a fair question. I'm a little confused about it sometimes too. I don't know if technically you would say I was on staff. I was in seminary and did a one-year internship here, but I got paid for it. So I got paid to go to school. Maybe just as important, Pastor Troy was talking about the faithfulness of God through the years in this church. My history here goes way back as well. I was actually here when I think Joyce, your dad, and Mom are Morris and Sophia Tyson. Yeah, they were here with Reverend Don Boss, and that's when I was here. So that's a long time ago, but my history goes back further than that. My grandfather was actually the janitor here, and I don't remember what decade that would have been, probably in the 40s or 50s, maybe before that. But I grew up here from 3rd grade and graduated from KV in 1975. Went to college, met Cindy, got married, we went to seminary, and during seminary career came here, and we were truly blessed by our experience here at American DeMott, and I have remembered and used many of the lessons that I learned here at ARC in my ministry over the years. We spent our first 8.5 years in Wyoming, Michigan, which is on the southwest side, or kind of southwest of Grand Rapids. I knew Dan Gelsma when we were both there in South Grand Rapids classes together, and now the last 23 years we've been at the same church in Iowa, Bethel Reformed Church in Applington, Iowa. And one of the significant things that happened while we were there is the old church that was over 100 years old burned down. And so we rebuilt in a different location and a more contemporary structure, and have been trying to do praise teams and praise bands like you folks did so beautifully today. And so I was just truly blessed. It's been a blessing to be here, to meet old friends and see you again, and hopefully maybe today I'll meet a couple of new friends as well. So congratulations to American Reformed Church for your 100 years. That's a great accomplishment. And I'm going to just let Cindy say something about our kids and grandkids.
I get to talk about the kids. I don't know if you remembered our oldest, Nathan. He was 6 weeks old when we moved here for our one-year internship. And I can remember packing up boxes back in seminary at our apartment, and people from our church were helping, and I sat there and cried. It's like, don't ever do this to your wives. Don't ever do this. But as Scott said, we were truly, truly blessed for that year that we were here. Nathan and his wife have 2 children, Joel and Eliza, and they live in West Des Moines, which is about 2 hours from us. So it's an easy drive down there and back in a day, or stay overnight and spend a week or whatever. Our middle daughter, Nessa, is married and has 2 little boys, Asher and Heath, and they are, all 4 of our grandkids are the joy of our lives. They are so fun. And our youngest daughter, Natalie, she'll be 27 in November. So she is not married, so if you know of have any sons, grandsons. No, she's having fun in life. She's finishing up online classes through Arizona State, and she'll graduate in December. And so we're very proud of all of them, and again, we thank you for the invitation to come. We've enjoyed our weekend, and God bless.
Congratulations.
Thank you both so much.
Roger DeYoung, there he is. Welcome back, Roger. We see you every so often, son of the church. And fun fact, one of my examiners for my seminary exams, yeah, thankfully I passed by his grace.
You did good. You did good. Good to be with you. A lot of new faces here after I left 50 years ago from this church, and that's a good thing. But just a brief update on my family. My wife, Janet, and I have 2 daughters, Sarah and Rachel. Sarah's husband, Steve, this weekend is going to get a kidney transplant in the city of Detroit. So Janet is collecting our 2 grandkids from them today as we'll take care of them for the next 2 weeks. My other daughter, Rachel, is out in the Seattle area and working as a physician's assistant at the Fort Lewis Army base there. So we're praying that God will keep her safe from her exposure to the COVID as well. So 50 years ago, I never would imagine I'd be here thanking you today, because I always try to sit in the back of the church and be quiet and even behave, which was hard for me. But God, in his mysterious ways, works in our lives and draws us into ministry. One interesting story that I have to tell you from the early 70s, when I went to Hope College, I started a student ministry there in the student church, actually creating Bible studies and prayer meetings with some of the students. And I was encouraged to seek some financial support for that, so I came back here and met with the consistory. My brother-in-law, Ralph DeCook Jr., was on consistory, and I was very nervous about it, didn't want to do that, but I made the request. After the meeting, I asked Ralph, how it went, and he said, "They did not understand a word you said." But in spite of that, American Reformed Church gave me support to work with that ministry, and then from there on, the chaplain encouraged me to go to seminary, which I'd never even thought about. But we went to New Brunswick and back to Western in Holland. Then I pastored a small church in the Poconos called Bushkill Reformed, and from there went to the Winnebago Indian Reservation as a RCA missionary, and again, you supported me without even my making a request that time. And we learned a lot from Winnebago people, and from there I was asked to work for the Denominational Global Mission Program, which I did for 20 years, and there had the privilege of working with many of our Reformed Church congregations here in the United States as well as Canada, connecting them to our mission partners around the world. And we're able to visit them as well and find brothers and sisters in Christ there. A lot of that stemmed from, even though I sat quietly in the back, listened to missionaries like Bob and Maury Swart, their kids Dick and Donna, and their son Caleb. Bill and Sarah Unzickers were missionaries in Japan back then, the Swarts in Africa, which made a big impression on me. And it was a privilege to be involved in that mission in my life and seeing the kingdom of God come to earth as it is in heaven. Today, I'm a member of Third Reformed Church in Holland, Michigan, working with the McGees, George and Joyce, even attend George's meeting with the Sunrise Saints once in a while. But Third, also like American, has a strong global mission support as well as community involvement. And one of the things we're doing is supporting the hungry Christians, few Christians in Pakistan, working with a Hispanic church on the border of Mexico and the U.S., and also reaching out to our new Hispanic neighbors. George and Joyce didn't mention, but Holland is now 26% Hispanic population. And we've recently hired a young man from Chiapas, Mexico, where I spent a lot of years working with the missionaries. He's the first Chiapanego ordained minister in the Reformed Church in America. And having him on our staff opens up a whole new world of ministry to our migrant and immigrant neighbors and welcome them to worship with us. We also have a ministry with students on Hope's campus, mostly Japanese students who come to study with a little English and a little support, and now we're working with most of the international students there as well, making them feel welcome and sense the love of God in their lives. So, with all that said, I appreciate the background, the basics that I learned here at American Reformed Church, and appreciate the great opportunities and privilege you've given me to work in God's ministry.
Next one, Reverend Zach Pryor. Come on up, Zach.
You'll know why I have these notes here in a second. I cannot say how incredibly wonderful it is to come back and see and meet with you guys. I know my wife really, this is in a way her second homecoming because she grew up in this church, and so she always remembered when it was Mr. and Mrs. Myers, Mr. and Mrs. whoever, Lagavine, whatever. And so to come back then and all of a sudden have to learn your first names was really weird. And I'm like, what do you mean? It's Art and, that's just Art and Donna. What do you mean? Oh, no, that's Mr. and Mrs. Lagavine. And I'm like, okay, well, fine. So if, for some of us too that haven't been here in a while, because it's 20 years for us, when you walk up to us, unless you have an app on your phone that wipes away the wrinkles and the gray and the few extra pounds maybe that we all now carry, we may not remember your name. So please say that to us. So that way, if it's been a few years, you can go, oh yeah, that's you guys, that's right. So of course the faces I recognize, I'm like, yeah, I know you. But anyway, we're glad to be back and celebrate really what God's been doing. I think it was funny. You mentioned to me, Kevin, about the fact that we first had the first drum set sitting over here the very first time. So to see that elevated in the back in its own cage, because you know the drummer's a rabid nut, and so you got to keep him trapped back there, is good. But to see you guys worshiping in such passion with the screens and everything else, that's truly a beautiful thing. I served here from 1997 to 2000 on a contract. Wasn't actually ordained till we got here and ordained in 2000 as the Ute guy. And that was kind of my job. But our son Joshua was born here in November of '99. And for those that have had challenging pregnancies, that started our challenge, as many of you know. We ended up soon after that, though, taking a call to Twin Falls, Idaho, which when we visited there, it's like, okay, you saw a guy hauling a four-wheeler and another guy hauling a snowmobile and another one hauling a jet ski. And I went, okay, I think this is a good place to go. So we went out there and were there for about 2 years and learned a lot, really. Brian Vriesman was the pastor there at the time. He's from the Holland, Michigan area. Yeah, you guys know the name. His dad was up there, big old guy. But Brian was there in Twin Falls, Idaho for about 40 years, and he just retired recently. And so 20 years ago, I had a chance to learn from him and what it means to pastor on a long-term basis. The thing is, though, and I had planned to eventually be the senior there and retire there, but God had other plans. And it was actually a really good thing because we got a call back to Orland Park, Illinois, which Howard Hoekstra, many of you probably know that name. And within a month, Joshua had his first bleeding episode. And so it's like to go to St. Anne and all the hospitals there was far better than to go to little old Twin Falls, Idaho with the medical center. By the way, Twin Falls piece of history is that's where Evel Knievel just tried to make his leap over the river there. So didn't go well, in case you haven't watched that. But basically we got there to Chicago, and after about a year though, something that, and even being here in the time I was at, it really became up, is that I had this insatiable desire to get folks' approval. I had to have approval, and I didn't realize how much of an impact that was until that caught up with me on a mission trip, and I kind of said some dumb things. And I got back to the church, and I was talking with the executive pastor, our XO as well, Ron Ovitt, and he said, Zach, you might want to do what I did, and that's take a break for a few months and go and work on some stuff and get some of those issues sorted out and all that. And I said, Ron, that sounds like probably a good idea. So I took a few months off. Those few months lasted 16 years. And the beautiful thing about that is that God took that time, it took that long really to cut out the scar tissue and the memories and the pain and the history and the struggles and trials and my own brokenness out of my heart. Thankfully, God didn't do it all at once because it probably would have killed me. But 16 years it was. And soon after we left Calvary Church there in Orland, October 7th, 2004, which, just a few days ago, Joshua was no longer suffering the challenges that he had. I won't go into all that because I know I could have everybody crying in 2 minutes, I guarantee it. But it was a very difficult time, for sure. And when we came back here to bury him, I barely remember anybody that visited, because you're in shock and you're trying to comfort the folks that come up to you, because I'm in La La Land and they're the ones that are crying, and so you're trying to comfort them. But I'll never forget Keith Jolink walked up to me, and he said, and this was Keith, and of course he's an awkward kid at the time. This is 20 years ago. You all know him. He's a little older now and a little more capable. But his comment was, Zach, that stuff that you talked about in youth group, I'm doing what he was doing. In youth group, and that kind of stuff. Well, I went to college, and I figured out that was right. I lost it. I made Oprah, her ugly cry, look like a passive, quiet, calm event, okay? I completely lost it. Because here it was, a kid that came back and said, Zach, all that effort and that time that you put blood, sweat, and tears into the first church where you make a lot of stupid mistakes and say a lot of stupid things, yes, I agree, but his life was beginning to be transformed at that time. And as far as I was concerned, job done. If that was the only reason I came to American, I was ecstatic. Well, yes, we buried Josh, and from there, though, I ended up, well, I got to say, too, you guys were incredible as far as caring for him. Yes, as far as reaching out to being bedridden, all the hours and hours and hours that you guys came over, and he peed on some of you, and it was really a beautiful thing that you were able to extend your love and care.